Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Kelsey Nordstrom-Sanchez, and I'm the co-chair of the Reforma Education Committee. Today is our first Reforma Education Committee webinar, and it's going to be focused on career pathways, academic or public. And we're so lucky to have members of the Reforma Education Committee with us today to answer some of these questions and share their experiences. So I'm just going to call on everyone so that they can introduce themselves and tell us where they work and what their role is. So let's start with Essy.
Hey everyone, my name is Essy Barroso-Ramirez and I'm the co-chair of the Reforma Education Committee and I work in an academic library in the Bay Area and I used to work in a public library before this.
Great, thanks, Essy. What about Katherine?
Hi everyone, my name is Katherine Chiriboga and I work at the Arlington Public Library based in Arlington, Virginia, not Arlington, Texas. And I'm a programs and partnerships team that works a lot with the youth services department.
Thanks, Katherine. Cheryl, you next.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Gerken, and I am Course Content Initiatives Manager at the University of Arizona Libraries in Tucson, Arizona.
Fantastic. Yoly.
Hi, I'm Jolie Avella. I work at the Newburgh Free Library, Public Library. I am the New Americans and Adult Literacy Librarian.
And Alejandra.
Hi, I'm Alejandra Rodriguez. I'm a librarian with a consortium of private universities and colleges.
Very cool. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So this first set of questions has to do with career pathways and the job market. So our first question is, can you share your career journey and what led you to work in either a public or academic library?
Yes, I will begin. Mine was a mid-career change to get into librarianship. I was teaching English as a second language, both to adults and children, for about 5 years. Librarianship, library's always been a major part of my life since I started kindergarten. Then I decided to go to English as a second language. In between jobs, layoff, I've decided to go back to get my master's in information science. And I began first with school librarian. Almost at the end, I switched to public librarian. I realized it offered me more job opportunities where I was at the moment in New York State. And I began my librarianship. And I went to a state university. I realized there were many different universities that offer it. And I did an online program, which for me was great because I can do a full-time job and do my studies as well.
Great.
I'll follow up with what Yoli was saying because I had a similar experience as well. Kind of in between careers, I chose to volunteer at my local public library and then saw that they had an opening for a library associate. And I was like, okay, I'll apply and at least I'll make some money while I'm looking for my career. And then I just loved working there. So got my master's degree and continued working at that public library and then moved on to an academic library and now a consortia. So I feel like most people don't start wanting to be a librarian because there really isn't an undergrad degree for librarians. At least most of the librarians I've met.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Okay, so the next question, what skills or experiences helped you land your first job after earning your MLIS or library science degree?
I can start on this one. I am a former bilingual K-5 educator and school librarian, and all of the skills that I developed in those positions have been really critical to my job as an academic librarian. But I think even my jobs when I had service jobs and working waitressing, working in a record store, all of those skills really contribute to the work that you do in librarianship, because every job essentially requires good communication. You need some good skills for interpersonal relations, interacting with the public, interacting with supervisors. I mean, I think it's important to realize, like, it doesn't matter that you may not have any experience in a library or you may not have any experience in education. So much of, so many jobs provide great training that's going to be useful to you when you enter the profession.
Yes, I will add to that as well. So the different job skills really added to my resume. The first position I applied for was public engagement librarian. In my other positions, I did a lot of outreach, setting up meetings, going to job fairs. I also work with SUNY Research Foundation. We were a computer lab that worked trying to decrease the digital divide. I knew Microsoft, QuickBooks, GED. It was a varied job skills we had to do, and working with the public. And that also, with the patrons that we get in the public librarians, so we were getting unemployed, seniors, homeless at the community, that added as well. And bilingual. So the Spanish English was very needed in our community, still is in our community, as the majority are Spanish speakers. That added as well. So customer service, I worked in different areas as well. So that added to the skills that added to the master's degree that perhaps we didn't learn about it at the schools, but the additional skills that you get from all the other jobs. And it was my first librarian position as well, but they looked at it and they were impressed with the different skills that I brought in, that you sometimes the public doesn't realize, and students as well, of the different skills that we need to work in the library. With, yes, the books, but there's so much more, and that was what was needed.
Yeah, something I like to tell new grads, or, when we have interns in our library, I always tell them transferable skills. Like, so many of your skills are transferable. And I think it's important to not forget that you have those skills. You might not have a ton of library experience before your first full-time library job, but you've got a lot of skills. So thanks, everyone. Our next question is, what do you wish you had known about the job market when you were graduating?
I think I will tack that one on. To the earlier points of like how transferable skills, it is important when you're doing your like resume for the job market. I think that sometimes it's not as open as you would like it to be. And sometimes you may have the MLIS, or you're in the middle of 2 or 3 semesters, and you still might need to start with the lower levels of the tiers of this grand system. So sometimes when you're taking like social justice classes and it's like down with the meritocracy, but wait, no, there's still a little bit. I think that it would be better if there was a little bit more openness or transparency in that while we're in school, or in any positions as you're trying to move up, because it is typically there's a budget and there's like positions available and not available and people leave or not. So I think that I hope there'd been more candidness in that component moving in the future in this field.
I'll just add too, I was lucky. I did my MLIS at the University of Denver, and I did it online during the pandemic, but my last semester I got to take a class about career preparedness and interviewing. And from what I've heard from a lot of librarians is that's not something that's typically offered all the time. And what I found so valuable about it was the insight that I learned. Like I learned that, if you're applying for an academic library job, you should months in advance because those processes take a really, really long time. I didn't know that. I also learned that for your first, library job, you might have to move. You have to kind of be open to relocating. And I think that that's something that's kind of tough for people too, but you have to go where you can get that experience.
That's a really
Um,
great point.
but thank you,
Yeah.
Katherine. Yeah. So our next question is, how can new grads make their applications stand out when applying for positions?
I think I'll just add right now when you talked about getting to relocate and should you apply to a location that is different from your own, do a little research about that community that you're trying to get into, either to see if you really want to be there for yourself and or during your application and a potential interview, you have like a background of that area, that region, the different communities within that community. I think that is a huge component when one trying to stand out. You can't just copy and paste from a different application.
Yeah, I will add to that too, that to me, having reviewed a lot of applications for different positions, the cover letter is really, really important. And it's really important that you personalize the cover letter and make it specific to the organization you're applying for and not just copy and paste from a previous cover letter. You need to edit very carefully. That's where you have a chance to really make yourself stand out in that cover letter, because resumes kind of flow into one another. And so the cover letter is your pretty much singular opportunity, in my opinion. And so one of the things that I noted when I was going through a lot of applications is that it was really obvious when applicants don't do their homework and they don't know anything about the organization, they don't make mention of the organization. And that to me was like an instant no. And so we want to hire people who are investing the time and the energy to learn about the organization, learn about the job. You can create your cover letter and make it specific and direct to what the job description is, so that you make sure that you pinpoint those exact ideas that they're looking for and those skills that they're looking for. And your cover letter is, again, that one opportunity you have to really stand out and speak to the folks at that organization. So I encourage everybody, you can use AI to do it. My recommendation is to write it and then run it through AI for edits, but make sure it's in your voice, make sure it represents you, and that it's not AI just creating a regular cover letter. So it's those personalized details that are really going to make your cover letter stand out.
Great advice. And spell the institution right. Make sure you
And refer to the
spell
institution.
the institution right. Yeah, that definitely matters.
One other thing that occurred to me that I never had really thought about, and this was something that just an instructor in one of my courses had mentioned, is that, it's not really just that organization interviewing you, it's your opportunity for you to interview the organization as well, because that's the way you get a better sense of what you can expect from that organization. What are their values? What do they provide for professional development opportunities? What are you concerned about and wonder about? That's also really valuable, because when you're the interviewer, that this person, again, is really thinking thoughtfully through this job, thinking thoughtfully through what their position might be and what that position looks like. So I think it's important to consider your opportunity to ask questions of the organizations.
Absolutely. And I'll just add, just from an academic perspective, and maybe somebody can add on about the public library experience, but I wasn't aware when I was an MLIS student that the interview process for an academic library is often all day. It often starts at 9 a.m. and ends with a dinner, which is actually still part of the interview process. So definitely what Cheryl's talking about, like it's an opportunity, not only for the interviewing committee to get to know you, but for you to really get to know them. So I would say make sure you do come with questions and review, the organization's website, look at their mission statement, look at their values and see how those align with you as well. But that's just something to keep in mind that you may have to travel for an interview and it might be an all day situation. So let's see. Another question is,
Can I add something really fast to that, Kelsey, that I didn't realize?
absolutely,
Because
yes.
mine is not a faculty position at my organization, and I know yours is. And at our organization, when you're applying for a faculty position, you have to do a presentation to the entire staff. That's
Yep.
a big deal.
Yep.
And people know it when they're in applying for faculty positions. But again, it's something to recognize that you may be asked to do presentations to a group of people or to the entire organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And something when I was in grad school, I didn't realize that when you did an interview, there's often a pretty big committee. So I remember like my first round interview, I logged into Zoom and then I just kept seeing people pop up until there were like 10 people in the room. And I really was not expecting that. So that's something to consider as well. It might not be a one-on-one exchange depending on the role that, you're applying for. So, okay, next question. Are there particular specializations or emerging skills that you see as highly valuable in today's job market?
I'd like to start us off on that one. So I think obviously AI is very prominent right now. Along with that, my personal belief is that archiving and exhibiting right now more than ever is essential. I think it's always been kind of, even if you're a generalist librarian or whatever your role is, I think it's always been kind of part of your role depending on your workplace. But I've been a public librarian and an academic now. And I just think that they're highly relevant regardless of whatever it is that you do on a day-to-day basis. So if you possess those skill sets or if you're learning about them, I think it'll only supplement you in the workplace.
A great point.
I have discovered in my current position, I'm in collection services. And so the majority of my colleagues in my department are back-end librarians. So they're system librarians, discovery librarians, electronic resources librarians. And that is a field that has a massive amount of opportunity. Those jobs are always open everywhere. Because it's not really something that you necessarily learn very much about in library school, at least I didn't. But they're critical jobs and you have to have those positions in any library. And so I would encourage you, if you are interested in learning more about those jobs. In my current role, I wear many hats, but one of the things that we don't have a discovery librarian at our library, and I've always been very interested in websites and user experience and what the experience is for our users when they're trying to find resources. And so I've been doing some work related to that I really like. And so sometimes you may think that you want to do a particular type of work because I was a former educator, so I thought I would want to be an instruction librarian. But I really like this back-end work and I like the ability to do some of the user-facing experiences. And so I think that you don't often know what you like until you do it. And likewise, you don't know what you don't like until you do it. So I think sometimes it's just you take a job and it may not be your fairy tale job, but sometimes it's really important to take those jobs because it helps you discover your own passions and your own skill set and what you would like to be doing. And in librarianship, it's nice because you can mix it up often. So that's also very helpful.
Those are great points. And I feel like sometimes with your first job in a library, getting your foot in the door might be the hardest part. And so let's say maybe you accept a role and you realize after, a year or so, it's not your favorite. Well, sometimes other positions in the same organization will become available. And so you might be able to be an internal candidate and switch into something else. Or I think it's important to try and volunteer or do internships if you can while you're in your MLIS. So you get the opportunity to see different aspects of librarianship, the different projects that you can work on. I think there's a lot of room in the profession for so many different personality types. And I think that's something that's so cool about librarianship too. I would also add that I do think highlighting social media can be an asset, especially nowadays. I tell new grads all the time, I'm like, well, do you use social media? And they're like, oh yeah, I use all these programs. I know how to make videos. I make TikToks. And I'm like, yeah, let's put that on the resume because that is a skill that libraries do need. And I think it's sometimes overlooked. So we're going to transition into some questions about the differences between academic and public libraries. So the first question I have here is, what are some key differences in working at a university versus a public library? Who's going to start us off?
I don't mind starting if that's all right. So I was a public library branch manager while I was getting my MLIS, and then I became a youth services librarian once I was close to graduating. And I was a youth services librarian for about a year before I came to academia. And in my experience, I don't want to speak for all because obviously, like everyone has their own experiences. It was very much at the public library, it was very much in person, fully at a desk, no remote work, very limited remote work. In-person presence was mandatory. That to me, that's what sticks out the most, as well as the community centeredness, because now that I'm in academia, it's still community centered, but now my patrons are students and faculty, whereas before it was everyone in the community. And I think for me as well, I'm a faculty librarian, so I have a lot of autonomy now compared to when I was a public librarian. And I didn't realize that until I switched into this role. So I think that's something to be highly cognizant about if you're in library school, because you'll just accept whatever your position is, but maybe you should consider, in addition to the skill sets needed for your position, what your work life will be like depending on the positions that you accept, because there's significant differences.
A great point.
Yes, to add to Essy's comments here, yes, the public librarian, you have direct everyday relationships with the patrons. And we're talking about from babies to seniors. So it's the entire community. We have desk time every day. So we have two desks, the info desk and the reference desk. It's answering the phone calls from the community. We're doing programs as well. So we're all responsible to do different programs. It could vary from weekly to monthly. So as well, not only develop them and creating programs, but sometimes running the programs. We have big events that we also do for the community. We had two huge ones recently, Dia del Niño, Day of the Child, with the school district, which we had over 600 participants that came from the community. And then that past Saturday, we had the fandom. And that was also, I believe, 250 people. So it's, that is why I think it's a big difference with the academic librarian. We are very with the community. We go to their events, table in, different meetings. And that's, most of the librarians are involved with that on a daily, weekly basis.
That's amazing. And I have to add that in academic libraries, we often look to the public libraries for our inspiration because their programming is extensive. It's amazing. And whenever we can kind of piggyback on some of their ideas or, or borrow templates that they've used, we always do that. Even when we go to ALA, I love to see all the programming the public libraries do because it's just so incredible. So, and important. Does anybody else want to add?
I do want to just, Essy brought up the point about like the patrons and how they're different. When I started working in libraries, I was like a mother with elementary school kids, and I was like, I want to be a school librarian, but I was like, wait, I don't want to deal with other people's kids and my own kids. And then it was like, I want to be a youth services librarian, and it was during COVID, but then it's like, wait, I have to plan for like, I am a military spouse too, and my husband had some weird hours, and it's like solo parenting sometimes, and then like that work-life balance with that in the public library, because my husband and I both joked we forgot that we're dealing with the public, so we have to like sometimes accommodate their hours of like being available from 5 to 9 p.m. or in like your patrons in an academic setting, the young adults want to be out till midnight and then they'll study. So like I was like, that's why the libraries are open for 24 hours. So kind of thinking about that component of it. I'm really lucky in my position right now where programs and partnerships where I get to work not at the public desk, but go out into the community, and we've developed like great relationships with the local university and with the nonprofits, so ways to bring the library outside. So when you're doing your search, get your foot into a door wherever you're at, but then also look at other opportunities, such as like being outside of the building and bringing the library to others.
Amazing insight. So our next question, and we kind of touched on this a little bit already, but how does outreach and engagement look different in academic and public libraries?
I can start on this one. I started my career actually as a adult programming librarian at my local public library right around the start of COVID. Actually, like right at the start of COVID. So the library was still closed when I started, and it was all virtual programming then. And I did that for about 2 years before I moved into academic librarianship. And I still, even though I'm with a consortia, I still work mainly with private universities and colleges. But I found that the biggest difference in between, at least outreach wise, was just the communities that you tap into when you do engagement. Because I recall, at least from the public library standpoint, I was reaching out to like the Hispanic Business Coalition, the Council on Aging, even the local Rotary Club to get my foot in the door, to tell all these different communities all the programming we had at the library and why they should love their library and why they should come visit their library. Like, advertising to as many communities as I could. Whereas when I was at a university, I was definitely advertising more to the student clubs and organizations. Because I mean, for me at least, there was no issue getting faculty in the door, no issue getting faculty to use the library and to want to do library instruction. It was mainly getting the students into the door. So I found that my easiest way to outreach was to go to these different student organizations and go to their meetings and tell them, we have this, that would be perfect. We have rooms where your organization can meet and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's been my experience too as an academic librarian. We do have an outreach librarian. That's one of his coordinatorships. And so we try to do, which we, model after our public libraries, but we try to do some cool book displays as well and keep those fresh and rotate those out. We're also always doing tabling events. We're at the orientation, we're on the quad where we can interact with students. I even think like being at the research help desk can kind of be a form of instruction and outreach. And yeah, we try to plan events like in our makerspace. We have a makerspace in our library. It's so popular with students. So anytime we can bring in new skills, new crafts, we like to do that as well. So I will say the public libraries, though, the outreach is really incredible. Just how, how far they can reach into the community and the response that they get. So I'll never stop talking about that, about public libraries. Does anybody want to add to that question about outreach and engagement?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, great.
Oh, go ahead, Yoly.
Thank you. Oh, yes, just to add, as everyone has said, we have a community engagement coordinator, we have a program American librarian. Everything we do is focus on outreach and engagement. So everything we do, a component is always outreach and engagement. Are we going out to tabling? How are we going to reach the patrons, the community, social media? Our flyers are going to be everything, all the events, meetings we go to, we're always, which flyers should we bring? What we're going to bring to the community. So constantly thinking about that, and we try, I think most of our positions, some involvement with outreach and engagement. Who can go? There's we're very connected with our school district. They're having a multicultural this Thursday, this event, who's gonna go, what we're gonna do. So it's constantly going out to the community. And if we can't, it's going to be social media or Zoom somehow. And we really rely on our partnerships. So we have great partnerships with different agencies, organizations, the school district, and going into their events. What are they doing? How can we work with them? So it's constantly, that's our main focus that we do in everything we do. Our collections, programs, local history. Yes.
Can I add one thing? I was a teacher in the 90s, and the landscape was very different in terms of how our university thought about our K-12 communities, and there were a lot of resources available to local educators from the university, different departments. It was a focus. It was obviously either a mandate or a requirement from multiple presidents that that each department needed to provide some sort of outreach opportunity to local students regarding the whatever discipline they were representing. And the same was true with the academic libraries. Their school groups used to come and tour the libraries. There were different events that they would have, and that's kind of gone by the wayside. And I keep wanting to bring it up to current and future generations as a reminder, like this was a really amazing opportunity to bring those K-12 students onto your campus for recruitment opportunities, but also just enrichment opportunities. And I think that that really needs to come back, because it's really critical that academia reach out to the K-12 community in every town, city, and population, because we are resource heavy, frankly, compared to many K-12 districts. And I think that, to me, is reason alone that we should be doing a little bit more. So just giving my little political stance there.
Essy, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just in the interest of time, I'll just say briefly that I really enjoy being able, with the autonomy that I have as a faculty member, I really enjoy being able to do outreach within the university I'm first gen, so I feel like an affinity towards going to El Centro, which is where the Chicano Studies Success Center is, or EOP, and just finding different ways to engage with students in person. If that makes them feel more comfortable asking for reference help or asking for help finding resources, then to me, that's really worthwhile. And then I always look to events that the Outreach Librarian does here for like Admitted Students Day or just different opportunities to engage.
Absolutely. And I'll just briefly add, if you are an academic librarian, reach out to your public library system for partnership. I think there's so many amazing opportunities for that. In our library, we had our public library system come in and do a tabling event where we signed students up for public library cards. And it was amazing. So many students signed up. So I would say, reach out to your local public library and try and build that community partnership, because that can be a really incredible and powerful thing. So our next question we had, let's see, we've kind of touched on this this. Can you talk about the types of patrons you work with and the unique challenges each group presents?
I can start. So again, I'm a faculty librarian at a university, and so my primary patrons are students, undergraduates and graduate students. I'm the political science and communication studies liaison, and I didn't get to choose those disciplines when I accepted my job. They assigned disciplines to me, so I don't have. My undergrad was not in poli-sci or comm studies, although I do have my associates in comm studies. But my point is that these are mostly poli-sci and comm studies students. So they're my primary patrons. And unique challenges that I encounter with them is I'm trying to make sure to teach information literacy from an equity-centered perspective. I remember, I'm first gen, and I remember walking into a classroom not knowing, what the difference is between writing a research paper for a literature class versus writing a lab report for a chemistry class. So I try to always ground myself in that perspective, and I try to teach information literacy from a foundational standpoint, not assuming that everyone has arrived to the university with the same level of research skills. So that's how I challenge myself, and that's how my students challenge me, because I try to teach them as best I can through that lens. Also, faculty are my patrons because I am supporting them in their research, supporting them with their conference presentations if they want it, with their curriculum, with their syllabus, finding materials for their courses. Challenges that might arise from that is I try to, as the Affordable Learning Solutions co-coordinator for my campus, I try to find open ed resources for their courses. And I think, well, with the current state of things, that can be challenging, but we do our best. And I'm very happy to support faculty and students as much as I can.
Fantastic.
Yes, I'll talk about two. There are many challenges with different groups. At Newburgh in the surrounding area, we have a large population of unhoused community, and that it's a lot of challenges. They come to our library, they find it as a safe place, and they come to rest, to find use our computers and internet. It's a social area. We're trying to build up a guide for different resources that we can provide for them. Recently, we had an intern as a social worker, which we're going to have it again in late August. So that was great. She met with different of our patrons to help them with their different needs. And sometimes it's just navigating through the red tape, where to go. Sometimes they're going around in circles. So helping to guide them and help them find different resources. Sometimes we can't find it. We can't, our time is limited as well. So she would sit with them and work with them. And we can't do it to find the right agency organization that could help them. So that's one of different patrons that we can help. As well, another group is immigrants. At the moment, with the current administration and the different policies, it's constantly being changed. So they come to us for guidance. Who can they reach out? Attorneys, they got to fill out this form, jobs, housing, many different challenges they're facing. So we're trying to provide that as well. Again, sometimes we might not be the expertise, or for legal reasons, we can't really say much or get involved. But again, we're reaching out to the different organizations and agencies to help them as well. We're trying to update our guidelines, the books that are available, different databases to help them as well. We are planning to soon do a few citizenship classes. We're going to increase our English as a second language classes as well. And if we don't have it, try to find which organization is going to offer different classes as well.
That's amazing. It's amazing boots on the ground we have at our public libraries. Our next question is, how does professional development and continuing education differ between academic and public libraries? Who'd like to get us started?
I can start and be brief. I think in my experience, it's completely dependent on the organization. And I know my colleagues who work in public libraries in our community do not have access to professional development funds for traveling for conferences. They do have professional development opportunities within their system, but there's no money provided. And in academic libraries, that often differs. And I know it's also different for those who are faculty librarians. So I think a lot of times it's very organization specific.
Definitely has to do with that budget.
Yeah, I agree with Cheryl, and I will add that in my experience, when I was a youth services librarian, our organization permitted like one conference per fiscal year. So through them, I was able to go to American Library Association for the first time, and it was amazing. And I got to see all the presentations, and it was emphasized that professional development and continuing education is important because libraries are always changing and adapting to whatever circumstances we're subjected to, whether they're academic or public. All libraries have to do that. And now that I'm an academic librarian and tenure track, it's required. So I have more ability to attend more conferences if I'm presenting at them during one fiscal year. So that's the biggest difference that I've noticed, although both emphasize and encourage and support professional development and continuing education.
Fantastic. So for purposes of time, I'm going to move on to our next set of questions, which is about advice for new librarians. So our first question is, what strategies do you recommend for building professional networks and finding mentors? This is a good one.
I think I'll start us off. My first semester, the 301, 501 class at the University of Arizona's library school, we had to go on LinkedIn and just create an account and get in the practice of looking at different jobs. And even now to this day, I'll be in meetings and then it's like, oh, this position got opened. And I was like, oh yeah, it opened last week. And I have a great relationship with my supervisor, but now it's like a joke, like Katherine's always looking at all the jobs in the region. But I think that helps because as you build your network, you can be like, there's a really great position, Cheryl. Maybe if you're considering leaving, you want to move to the East Coast, like just using it as an example, not putting anyone, sorry to put you on the spot like that, but I do have a LinkedIn account and I use it and will connect with anyone, and anyone who's watching, I'll just say approve, 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 because there's no point in trying to silo whatever professional information I can give and or share or receive from others. And so I think that LinkedIn is the great social media for that space, and to not be afraid to look at other job postings at other places, because then I think one of the strategies when you're looking for a job, you'll be like, that's the kind of job I want. So you might tailor your resume to look like that and have it ready when that timing is right. So there's bits and pieces to look forward to and other ways of looking at it.
I'll just add for LinkedIn, when I was in library school, one of our assignments similarly was to literally randomly send folks messages that were in positions that you were interested in. And it's funny because now in my role, I will get random LinkedIn messages from students that are like, hey, I'd love to connect and learn more about your role. And I'm like, yes, let's Zoom, let's talk about it. So I think that's a really beautiful thing about librarianship is the people, and they're always so willing to connect and help and uplift. So I would
100%
encourage
agree
you,
with that. Yeah.
don't be afraid to reach out to somebody and, ask if you can go for a cup of coffee or have a, virtual chat. I think that can be really helpful. And join Reforma. Oh my gosh, join some of the
100%.
professional organizations, right? That's the best way to network and meet people. I think that helped me the most. Some organizations, when you're a new member, they will actually pair you with a mentor. You can sign up for that option. So if you don't have somebody from library school or, somebody out in the world, they'll help you find that person. So yeah, anybody else have any insight into that?
Yes, to add to that, yes, I joined the different professional organizations. Ooh, sorry. National and regional. So NYLA's a New York library or organization. There's Southeastern. So different committees. So I joined different committees, and sometimes just going to the general meetings. And yes, I get, there's job openings here and there, so I get those, but there's webinars, there's educational, there's different, they have different webinars, discussions, the mentor, so the ALA has one, Reforma has one, so that's also available. And just meeting people, and sometimes, yes, just connecting and getting that relationship, and you get talking to them and you find out things, which is great. I even joined one because in January, I became the New Americans and Adult Literacy Librarian. So I joined this organization, Illinois, which deals with all that. So it's great to know them, and I've gotten great ideas for the collection that I do. So it was very helpful.
Amazing. So the
Do you mind
next,
if I just add to that? I'm sorry, I know we're
oh,
short on
add to it.
time.
Absolutely.
It's just like one thing that I wish someone would have told me is don't be afraid to chair a committee, to co-chair a committee, to volunteer for a board of something. Like even if you're newer to this career, like your expertise in any fashion will be appreciated, and you'll definitely open your network more if you're not afraid to volunteer for those leadership roles, and it looks better on your resume.
Absolutely. Amazing points. So for purposes of time, the last question I'm going to ask folks, okay, is do you still use reading as a form of self-care? If not, what are some other activities you do to take care of yourself?
I don't mind starting. So I still do read. I don't know that it's a form of self-care per se. It's just something that I enjoy, and I make time for it whenever I can. I wish that I could use it as a form of self-care by like joining a reading group or like doing something a little more fulfilling than for me just to read to myself. But uh, yeah, I do enjoy it still. And then other activities, I am also a doctoral student. So because of that, I don't have to pay for the university gym. So I like to, on my lunch when I can, or whenever I can make like 30 minutes, I like to just go to the gym, definitely take walks. And sometimes, you know what, I doom scroll. It's okay. I don't know that that's self-care, but yeah, that's what I do.
Anybody else? I'll say for me, I think something important for self-care is to find your community at your job. If you can find a coworker or two that, you guys can help support each other, you can vent to each other when you need to. I think that's really important. So like my coworkers and I, we will go for walks together during our lunches, we get outside, and sometimes you just need to vent. So I think that's really important to try and find some folks at your institution that you can get along with. And if not, I would say reach out to other librarians because we're all going through it. We're all going through it together. And I just think those interpersonal relationships really are self-care, especially in our field. Anybody else? How are you taking care of yourself? Or maybe this is, this is notice that you should be taking better care of yourself.
I will add to that as well. I was going to say, sometimes I to go out of the building, just have lunch. Usually I try to go with a coworker. We're going, oh, wherever. I'm like, wherever you like, um, just to get out of the building. I'm trying to not take work at home. So it's again, trying to, 5 o'clock. Okay, that's it. I have a day off. It's a day off. It's trying to, because I realized I was working going home, 8 o'clock, I'm still doing book orders, whatever that may be, to get that self-care. I love puzzles, video games. I'm doing audiobooks, which really I have a long commute. I love it listening to the different books. Sometimes I'm trying to increase my books. So I'm trying to pick different books, fun books, again, fun, different things. Really caring, self-care. And yeah, sometimes you do need to talk and vent about different things. My family after a while were like, all right, enough. So I'm but trying to find different areas of just that self-care, relaxing, just taking it easy. Yes.
Absolutely.
Ooh, something I want to say is I try to practice self-care at conferences. So since I have to go for work, I'll have like a conference buddy who's another librarian at another institution, and we'll coordinate to meet up, at least to have dinner once during the conference. And it's a really good way to stay connected with your network, but also enjoy like some leisure time.
Absolutely. I love that. It's great. Gotta always be creative, see what kind of self-care we can come up with. And yeah, time management, work-life balance is really important too. And that's not something I don't think that's talked about enough. And I even think, depending on the population that you work with, it can be emotional. Sometimes it can be really draining. So making sure to take care of yourself emotionally, mentally, physically is really important so that you don't burn out, right? But I wanted to thank all of you today for being panelists on our first webinar. For those of you that are watching this right now, we will be adding links and uploading different resources. So if you'd like to become a member of Reforma, we really do encourage you to do so. If you're interested in learning more about the Reforma Education Committee, or maybe even becoming a member, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So thank you all so much, and we look forward to many webinars in the future.